Peace be with you, everyone. Welcome to the channel. My name is Trevor. Very grateful to have you here. And today's video, I've got 5 fragrances that I consider highly underrated, all from well-known houses, but really that don't get a lot of talk in the community. If you're a regular here at the channel, then these fragrances aren't going to be any stranger to you. These are some of my favorites in my entire collection for their specific occasions and seasons. So I particularly mention them quite a bit, but I don't see a lot of talk about them in the community writ large. And so I would love to see a lot more people get their noses on these ones, experience them, and enjoy their beauty. So without further ado, I'm going to get right into the list here, starting off with the only cheapie. We've got Leather Jardin from Zara. So Zara gets occasionally mentioned as a fragrance house. It's not really all that popular. They do have a few well-known clones that they've got to offer, like I believe they have an Imagination clone. They've got that Sweet Warm Addictive fragrance, but this one in particular, I've only really seen Sebastian, the perfume guy, mention, and it is something that, especially if you're a fan of well-constructed, classic, vintage-style fragrances, this is a must-try in my opinion. And although it caters to a vintage aesthetic, it is not old school or outdated in its scent profile at all. It does evoke a sense of khaki suits, leather suitcases, much so a 70s vibe, kind of a Soul Train almost atmosphere, but done in an exceptionally high quality manner. Jo Malone was the perfumer behind this one, and it's got an exceptional floral citrus component over the top of a really nice dry brown leather. And one of my favorite cheapies in my entire collection, definitely in my top 3 of all time of cheapies that I've ever tried. This, I believe you can get this 100 ml for right around $50 from Zara, and I highly recommend it. I think it's great for transitional weather. The floral citric component plays pretty well into the springtime, but overall, this is one of my top picks for particularly the month of September, as the summer's starting to die down and it's still pretty warm outside, but starting to hanker to get away from some of those freshies. This one balances that fresh atmosphere out with that beautiful leather underneath of it, and really, I believe this one should be getting more talk. Definitely one of the 10 out of 10 cheapies in my collection. Next, we've got 3 designers. Another one for the autumn season, Bel Ami Vetiver. I've spoken about this one quite a bit on the channel. This one is kind of a nice licorice soft leather. So for me, this evokes an image of a worn out, dusty catcher's mitt hanging out in an attic with some sunlight filtering in through a window and a little bit of some dust motes floating around in the air. That's really the atmosphere that this brings to mind. I think the packaging does a good job of presenting the scent profile. This maroon colored sticker here gives me a little bit of that resinous licorice style sweetness that this brings to the table, that is differentiated from like a vanillic sweetness or some kind of youthful bubblegum. And then the golden color hue here in the juice reminds me of that light filtering in, just like a warm sensation that you get on your skin out at a window in the autumn time where the sunlight is touching you and you get that sense of being hugged by a warmth. But if you walk outside, it's cold and cool and brisk. This one does a really good job of just carrying itself in that time of the year, and this is a perfect signature scent. It's not too offensive, but it's still loud. It projects, not overtly beast mode, but you'd be catching wafts of it all throughout the day. Pretty inoffensive, borders right on the edge of classical and modern, and just an all-star fragrance that I think deserves a lot more attention. And it's been showing up at places like Joma Shop for a really affordable price. I've seen testers of this come down under $60, and I think it is a steal at that price. Next, we have Prada Infusion d'Iris Cedra. This is a re-release of Prada Infusion d'Homme. So although you will find this oftentimes on the discounters under the women's section, it is a unisex offering, and for me, this is my preferred Prada fragrance over Prada L'Homme. This one takes away some of the overtly powdery textural feel, gets rid of a lot of the overt sweetness as well, and just brings it down into a bare bones presentation of that luxury soap scent profile, as well as a unique, somewhat porous bubble bath style texture. This one is my go-to spring designer fragrance. If I had to only keep one spring designer, this would be it. It's definitely got that just effortless cleanliness quality to it. Smells of high quality, and the cedar in here is also pretty relaxing as you get to that near in the dry down, and gives it that little bit more of a masculine edge that keeps it away from being an overtly feminine offering, and extremely long lasting. I sprayed this one. My daughter likes to play around with my colognes, and she was asked me to put this one on the other day, and left for work, came home after like 10 hours, and she still was smelling profusely of this fragrance. So despite being somewhat of a freshie, this one's got really good lasting power, and I really believe this one needs to get a lot more attention here in the community. Definitely one of my favorite little under the radar fragrances. Next, this is probably the one that I would really wish that more people got their noses on. It's something that, as the spring is carrying on and the summer draws near, this one is a must try. Chanel Paris Edinburgh, the hidden Chanel men's fragrance. This is the answer to anybody that's been hoping to get something from Chanel other than a flanker of their 20-year-old men's fragrances that are getting a little bit worn out at this point, like the Allure Homme line, Bleu de Chanel. This is got a beautiful cypress note, an extremely well done lavender, and some awesome sparkly citruses, bringing together a somewhat calm, cool, collected vibe. The lavender in here is very fougere-esque without being old school. There's a cypress woody quality in here that's a bit mentholic and great for cooling off in the high heat. And the citrus just adds a texture that brings all the dimensionality into this fragrance. Performance is so-so. I get about 6 hours on it, but it projects and I catch good wafts of myself throughout the day. And if I had to paint a picture, it would be a lumberjack in a tuxedo. It's just got that effortless, gentlemanly quality coming in from the lavender, but that very rugged cypress woody quality, as well as some soft musks to kind of, and a little bit of vanilla sweetness to balance everything out. And at sub 130 for a 4.2 ounce from Chanel, this, like I said, is just one of the top tier, under the radar, underappreciated fragrances on the market, in my opinion, right now. And then finally, for my last pick for these underrated fragrances, this is from another well-known niche house. This fragrance has been out for, I think, maybe 6 years, but does not get as much talk. It's a flanker to a really popular niche fragrance, but because of the price point, it's not really been showing up in a lot of people's collections. However, Joma Shop has been recently getting it in for a heavy discount. Full retail, it's $600, but you can get it at Joma Shop oftentimes for right around $250. This is African Rose. So this brings a really beautiful jammy rose that dominates the African leather scent profile. The leather gets toned back a little bit, the cardamom and aromatics get toned back a little bit, and the rose comes to the forefront of the DNA, and I think adds a little bit more of a dimensionality to the overall composition, as the African leather can be a little bit linear and overpowering in some degree, but this one with that rose kind of adds a softness to the somewhat almost camphorous leather that you get out of the original edition of this, and easily one of my favorite rose fragrances in my entire collection. I can see why it's priced gouged, but at the discounters, I think this is really worth picking up, getting your nose on. Definitely get a sample first, as you know, rose isn't everybody's cup of tea, and rose can express itself in a lot of different ways, so you're going to want to have to make sure that this one's for you. But definitely one that I would like to see more people getting some experience with and showing up on more lists, because that definitely deserves a mention in more rose lists, of more autumn and winter niche lists. So that is African Rose from Memo Paris. And those are my top 5 picks for underrated fragrances. They weren't necessarily hidden gems. These were all from well-known houses. They're just fragrances from those houses that don't get a lot of mention. And this was a tag video, so thank you very much, Mike, over at the Fragrance Fraternity, for tagging me. I really appreciate you reaching out. And I'm going to leave this as an open tag, but I will tag a few channels in the description. I'm going to have to go back and look at who I'm really wanting to get in on this one. But overall, I would like to see more people get in on it and mention their underrated fragrances, so that way the rest of the community can go ahead and kind of get our foot in the door and understand where we're going to be looking at next to get our nose on something special. So as always, I really appreciate you sticking with me to the end of the video. I'll see you in the next one. Take care.